Hey, everybody, and welcome to Comics and Cinema. I'm your host, Alex Klein, and we've got a big show for you guys today. We are going to be talking Thor, Love and Thunder, full spoilers. So if you have not seen this movie yet, head to the theater and check it out. It did really well this weekend. They're projecting $143 million opening weekend domestic. I have a feeling it'll probably be even higher than that once Monday comes out. But because it's such a big movie, because we love these movies here at Comics and Cinema, I've got a very special guest to break down this movie, resident Thor fanatic, Anthony. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Hey, yeah, nice poster back there, man.
Thanks. I drew it. That's actually a hand drawing.
That's incredible. You might want to submit that for some critique or something. You want to make some money off that. So you got to watch this amazing movie, of course. Obviously, I wouldn't have invited you on if you had. I've never seen it. You shouldn't have seen it.
I just watched the trailer. I figure I could probably figure it out.
Yeah. What do you think of the movie?
Oh man, I absolutely love this movie. I've been a huge Thor fan since the first one, even with the blonde eyebrows. I don't care. Dark World is terrible, but it is what it is. And then Ragnarok is my number one in the entire MCU. So I was very, very excited to see this movie. I smiled for 2 hours. I laughed way more than I should have. And man, I just had a damn good time watching it.
Yeah, almost identical. I would say that is my review after seeing it a second time, because when I saw it the first time, I honestly was a little disappointed with it, but only because, and this is like all the credit to Ragnarok. I had watched Ragnarok the night before, and I was just losing my mind. And I looked on I rate everything on IMDb, and I hadn't watched Ragnarok. The last time I rated it was in 2018. And so it'd been a little bit since I've seen it. And I was just like, there's nothing wrong with that movie. Like, that movie is so funny. Every action sequence, I was like, holy cow, these action sequences are amazing. And I just kept saying, man, if they just do this again for Love and Thunder, like, we're going to be just fine. And they didn't really do that. And it was a mix of that. Plus, I love those two comic book runs, which we talked about in our last episode, are two of my favorite comic book runs. And so same thing there. They told them, but they deviated on a lot of things with them. And so I could have swore I checked my expectations at the door, but I definitely didn't. And so as I left, my only comment was, I need to see this movie again, because I was laughing. I was having a really good time, but I had a couple issues with it, which we'll dive into. But on my second viewing, I was like, man, I love this movie. I couldn't stop thinking about it that night. Like, all day long, I just kept running some of the jokes back in my head. And then, even watch the movie, all of the jokes hit again. I don't think there was any that I was like, there were a couple overall where I was like, whatever. I mean, not every joke's going to be funny, but all of the funny ones, I laughed even harder the second time, just because, like, everything with the goats, the hammers, all that stuff. Yeah. Oh, my wife lost it when that happened. She's like, oh, they've got goats. I was like, yeah, they scream the entire movie. But yeah, so glad to hear it. It sounds like from, I think, you as well, I would not rank this over Ragnarok. Would you say the same thing?
No, I think I ranked Ragnarok like a 9.6, and I think I gave Love and Thunder a 9.4.
That's fair. I think
like very close. I mean, I guess honestly what it would come down to is how much time I have to watch one. And if it's 2 hours or less, I would probably put on Love and Thunder. But if it's more than 2 hours, it would be Ragnarok, because I'm pretty sure Ragnarok's over 2 hours.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. That's 217, I think. It's either 217 or 212. But yeah, and that was the other thing too. Was this movie was an hour, and I couldn't watch it on Disney Plus, so I don't know the exact time, but it was like an hour and 57, I think, which means it's probably like an hour and 45.
Yeah, probably
something like that, which is kind of short. And I'm not complaining about it. I love a quick movie, and I definitely felt that the second time going, where I was like, wow, we're here already. Like, oh, okay, here we go. We're about to be at the end of this movie. But I think it could have also benefited from a couple more minutes. And I say that in terms of, like, there's a couple pieces of character development that I think, specifically with like Valkyrie, that I wish we'd have maybe seen a little more of. And it wouldn't have even then been that big of an ask for like just a couple of minutes, like 3 minutes of extra time for her would probably have done the movie wonders. So there's, my curiosity was like, well, why did they choose that time? But at the same time, when you're talking theaters, they're going to make more money because of that, because they're going to be churning and burning more people through, which is smart.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really have an issue with the runtime. I felt like even on a rewatch, like it all happened so fast, and like
Yes.
and that's good because you don't have a lot of lulls and you don't have a lot of here and there. But I mean, it definitely could have benefited from like you said, some more Valkyrie, to expand on her character because she's kind of a big deal. I mean, she's King Valkyrie, but in this you only see her doing Old Spice ads and then fighting in her pajamas. Like she's kind of just there.
Yeah.
She but at the same time, how can you put her on the same level as somebody like Jane Foster, the mighty Thor with Thor? And I mean, it was, a tough spot for her, but there's plenty of stuff for her in the future in the MCU for sure.
Yeah, that's honestly that's a really good point to make. I think had Jane not been chosen to be in this movie, I bet we would have gotten a lot more Valkyrie. And if we're sacrificing Valkyrie for anybody, I would be doing it for Jane. So
Right.
I think you've changed my opinion a little bit on that too, and I'm okay with that because I think based on the ending of this, and we'll certainly get to there. That'll be probably my most anticipated part of this is going to be talking about what comes next. I could easily see them doing something with Valkyrie, whether that's a Disney Plus series or in the next Thor movie sort of thing. Very excited to kind of talk about that with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So then, yeah, let's dive in, guys. We're doing a deep dive. I took copious notes after the movie, so hopefully I remembered everything and it's all in order. Anthony, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong on your.
If anybody's curious about the notes, this is what he sent me.
So, and I think I messaged you, and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna be taking some notes here real quick, and you were like, can you send those over to me when you're done? I was like, yeah, sure. And I'm just sitting there typing. I hear Lisa. She's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just typing up some notes right now. And then I looked, I was like, oh, that's a lot of notes. I think I typed those all up in like 10 minutes. But that's because, like I said, I mean, even after the first viewing, like there were vivid quotes in my head that I couldn't get out. There were scenes so it was like very easy to remember. Even with one viewing, I feel like you know most of this movie. There's not like there's a couple blink and you miss it type moments, but for the most part, and to its credit, honestly, it's very standalone. And yeah, like everything with Eternity, and when we'll talk more about it when we get there, is huge. But that's it. That's really like the only thing. And I was kind of surprised by that because I think, we'd had a lot of, oh, is Gore going to kill all of the gods from Moon Knight? Are we going to see this, that, and the other? And none of that sort of stuff happened. But I think that's a good thing. And it was weird. I saw a video on IGN the other day that was saying that Marvel needs to figure out phase 4 and quick. And it was like a 15-minute video of them saying like, oh, by this time, blah, blah, blah. They've released 55 hours of footage for phase 4 and we still don't really know where it's going. And I'm like, good. Like, isn't that what you want, right? I mean, obviously we would love to know where these people are going, but at the end of the day, the minute we know that, some of that excitement's going to go away. And then suddenly we're going to be there and we're going to be wondering, what's next? I feel like Marvel has been taking their time on purpose now because it's like, let's just show them that we can still make standalone movies. We can still make these movies where, there's a little tease to another MCU project, but for the most part, here it is. Taika, do your magic. Literally do whatever you want in this movie, which this movie certainly felt crazier than Ragnarok did. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, to that point, we're spoiled because we had, the Infinity Saga, which was 22 films, 22, 23. But I mean, after, the first one, even with that post-credit scene in Iron Man, when Nick Fury shows up and says, I want to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative, like, you knew where it was going. It was going to the Avengers. And then at the end of Avengers, like, you knew where it was going. And, Thanos was it. And as soon as they start talking about Infinity Stones, like, you know where it's going. And now, I mean, how many shows and movies have we had? And like every movie ends and it gives you a little tease of where it's going, but then you're still like, but how?
Right.
And
like how do any of these
and
connect
why?
with each other?
Like when Eternals ends and you see, Dane Whitman talking to the sword, and then you hear Blade's voice, and it's like, okay, but now what? Like, what's next? Like, as far as I know, I believe Blade has started filming as of like 4th of July area. I know that I had heard it was going to start filming, but even when this one ends, it's like, okay, but what is next? You see the Thor will return, but where and when?
Yeah.
So I mean, we're spoiled, and you're never going to be able to please everybody. So like you're in the camp of you're excited because it can go anywhere. Wednesday when Miss Marvel ends, we'll see where that's going to go. But as of now, it seems like everything is on just one big rope, but it's completely unraveled and all of the strands are going everywhere. And at some point, Marvel will be able to tie all those strands back together, but we just can't see how yet.
Yep. And I think there's a huge, and I'm loving everything. I didn't even plan to have this conversation, but I think it's important to have because I think they had to set a specific tone and expectation in the Infinity Saga because they were untested. Like with Iron Man as an example, right? They needed to show that Avengers Initiative thing at the end, and obviously Kevin wanted to say, "Hey, we're not messing around. Like we are planning to make this very comic book accurate, and here's your proof of it." And then dropping all those seeds as they go. Well, now they've proved to us that they can do that. So if they did that again, they would just be repeating themselves. Mm-hmm. So at this point, they're like, you know what? It's like the really good restaurant that gives you just a taste of the food. And they're like, don't worry, we're going to feed you, but like you're going to be very hungry by the time we do. And wouldn't you rather be very hungry before you eat versus just absolutely stuffed to the gills like it does feel sometimes, especially right now, like with whenever there's the movies and the Disney Plus series at the same time. And we've got Comic-Con coming up and there's going to be just an embarrassment of announcements there. I'm appreciating the moment. And again, for this movie, I really appreciated that it was so very standalone because I know we're going to get one of those ones where it's like, holy, I mean, and they just talked about, I don't know if you've seen this, but they just released the assembled episode. I think you said you hadn't, of Multiverse of Madness. And they were talking about in that this movie is just the beginning of the multiverse. They were like, a lot of the stuff we played with here, they're like, yeah, we went really crazy with it, which to those who would disagree, watch the assembled episode and you'll be like, actually, they really did go pretty crazy. But they were like, this is just the start. And they talked about how Doctor Strange is like, they're like, well, he used to be the protector of Earth. Now he's the protector of the multiverse. They literally said, well, we've shown you that there's an Illuminati in this other universe. So it's only a matter of time before we get an Illuminati in this one. So like all of these things are slowly coming. We just have to be patient for it. Mm-hmm. And speaking of patience, this movie opens up, and I've got this. So first section, I love this too. As I was listening, I guess this is me bragging, but the Ballad of Gore. It felt like there were so many different ballads being told, and I think that was sort of a theme from this movie of just like your poster, this very 80s rock, just metal. It wasn't even really metal, but more of that like hard rock sort of thing. Tons of Guns N' Roses songs in here, but we open up with the Ballad of Gore. And talk about a man with patience, carrying his sickly daughter, his sickly self across the barren wastelands of what I'm assuming is probably Arizona or something like that. Just really hot and dry and sandy. It could have been I'm glad it wasn't Tatooine. But
no, it was on the other side of the hill from the first Thor where Stanley, when he was trying to get Mjolnir out, he's on the other side of the hill. We just can't see it.
Yeah, I think right over the ridge is that truck Stan Lee was driving.
Yeah,
he was pulling the hammer out. But so we see this is straight from the comics. Everything about this totally comic accurate. His daughter dies due to malnourishment. It's probably just really, really hot, and is praying to his gods to help. And I loved that. They showed a lot in a very little amount of time of him saying, I'm not praying for myself. I'm praying for my daughter. Please protect my daughter. She dies. He buries her. And then he sees this oasis that kind of shows up. And you start hearing the whispers, which I loved that. I was like, ooh, who is this talking? And they kept saying eternity. And I was like, is eternity going to be in this? And then, he shows up in the oasis and we see Deacon from What We Do in the Shadows. Did not catch it as I was watching it, but when I was watching, I was like, seen that guy before. I was like, I know it's something Taika Waititi related. Then I was like, oh, that's right. He's the third vampire. So now the only person who hasn't been in one of these is the other vampire. And I always forget what that guy's name is, the one from Flight of the Conchords.
Jermaine Clement.
Yes, yeah, Jermaine Clements. Yeah, exactly. I honestly feel like at this point he probably was like, "No, man, I don't want to be a part of these movies." Like, because he clearly could have been. I don't think he wants to, which is fine. That's fair. But yeah, so his giant gods celebrating, eating lavishly. Gore's kind of feasting as well, and he's like, "Oh, like you're my god. Hey, what's up? I'm like the last guy here." And he's like, I don't care about you, basically. All that humans are good for is sacrificing themselves for the gods. And we see that he killed, and I saved this too, because this is straight from the comics. He killed it's like some black demon god or something that was carrying a necro sword that we find is what is the weapon that can kill gods. And he has Gore in a chokehold, and Gore has coolest scene of that sword just rising
up to him. Yeah.
Oh, stabs him, and he says he says it feels like a promise when he says you've been cursed. He goes, it doesn't feel like a curse, it feels like a promise, which I really liked, because he said, like, you promised you would protect us, but now his promise is the exact opposite, to kill all of them. And we do get a message then when he kind of touches the sword to reach eternity. We see the Bifrost. Even at that point, I had no idea what it meant, but I was like, whoa, where's this movie going to go, sort of thing. What did you think of that whole opening scene?
I enjoyed it. Shocker to you, well, maybe not shocker to you, but I've actually read that comic run.
Oh, nice.
So I've known a little bit about Gore. Shout out to our friend of the show and guest, Robert. He was the one who told me to read that. So I don't remember a ton of it, but I know that isn't that the one where there was 3 Thors.
Yeah,
there was like the old man. Okay, so obviously it differs a little bit from the movie, but I mean, from what I remember of Gore, I mean, the way it was set up in the comics, it was the exact same as they did it on screen. Now the Necro Sword, wasn't that created from Null?
Yep.
So isn't in the comics there's symbiote, like
yes.
It's made of symbiote?
But and this is the interesting thing. We'll see what Marvel decides to do with this, because they never make any mention that it isn't or that it is. We see shadows, and we do see what you could, again, retcon as like, yeah, those are all symbiote creatures created. Mm-hmm. They don't exactly look like symbiotes, but you could argue they kind of do. Right. But in the comics, it was the same way. The Necro Sword was the Necro Sword, and that came out in 2012, and it wasn't until Donny Cates' run, which I think was 2018, that he retconned it and said, oh, it's a symbiote. So Marvel may do the exact same thing whenever they get, rights or whatever it is to come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because that's easy enough to just say, like, that black creature right there, like, yeah, they're, symbiote on them.
Yep.
And whatnot. And it would also explain, the turn that Gore had, which was like immediate. Like immediately has the sword and then is immediately like, oh, I'm bad now.
Yeah, well, and I loved how they showed that his skin, like, immediately went gray. It had a little bit of yellow. His eyes start, like, that was an almost immediate corruption, kind of like the Darkhold.
Mm-hmm. And almost, as fast as he turned gray, he turned back to normal at the end too.
You're right.
I mean, he went from gray to just, pale, basically just pale.
Just pasty white.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, cool. Again, I was like, okay, how are they going to open up this movie? I thought that was the perfect way, set the tone right away that, yeah, it's going to be a little bit silly, but that Gore is not messing around and that he's a very serious character, which was cool. And so from there, then we get I really liked the opening credit thing, the fanfare. Mm-hmm. It was like it just felt like an acoustic guitar of the Avengers theme.
Yeah,
which was I really liked. And did you catch? We got Moon Knight in there. We got a Miss Marvel that we have not seen yet in the show in the fanfare. Did you catch that?
I knew Miss Marvel was in it. I think I saw it, but I just assumed I had already seen it.
I noticed it I didn't even catch her on the first time, but on the second time, it was just her and the costume that they keep advertising, but we haven't seen yet. Oh, okay. Which I'm wondering at that point, then she's got to get that costume in the last episode,
or she won't.
But then why is everything marketed with that costume if we don't even like that? To me seems like kind of cheap. But at the same time, I have no idea how she would even get the costume based on where things are at with the show. Right
Tony
now.
Stark. This is just
I guess that's fair. From the grave, yeah.
He's gonna mail it to her. Just ship it overnight.
Yeah, he made it way in advance. He knew.
Yeah, Peter Parker's gonna show up. He made it after he made his suit in Far From Home.
Yeah. On the 3D. Yeah, on the 3D print. That'd be cool, actually, a scene of her getting that 3D printed. That'd be awesome. So yeah, from there though, we open up and now we're on the Ballad of Thor, which this is essentially the trailer for the movie. Which as much as I was like, oh, I've seen all of this already. I a lot of credit to Marvel for, obviously they showed some bits from the Shadow Realm in the trailer too, but most of the trailer was from this opening thing of the voiceover from Korg talking about the space Viking. And I love that we got little bits and pieces of everything from all the prior films of how many times Loki has died, all of that stuff. Right. Which was I thought was great. I was like, okay, cool. And it was funny too. At least it was like, so give me a quick rundown of the movies before it starts. I was like, no, I said Korg does it, don't worry. She was like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah, and it worked out fine. When Korg called her Jane Fonda.
Yeah, and Jodie Foster.
And Jodie Foster.
Not Jane Fonda. Jane Foster. Oh, that's
yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. This actually was the the shortest time span in which the trailer was released and the movie came out. Usually you'll get a trailer for a movie 6 months in advance, and this was, I mean, when did we get a trailer? 3 months ago,
Yeah, it was not
and
long.
the movie just came out. I mean, this was, and I know a lot of that is just delays and whatnot with the state of the world, unfortunately. But yeah, so I actually did not watch any TV spots. I tried to watch as little as possible. I watched those two trailers. The first one where we didn't see gore at all, I think, and then the second one when they showed him.
Yeah.
I watched those two, but then I didn't watch anything else. Like, I'd close my eyes. I'd be like, I don't want to see it. I'd scroll through on the feeds on social media and be like, I don't want to see anything else. I already know I'm going to like this movie, and I want to see, especially with it being as short as it was. I was like, I don't want to see any more.
Yeah, and I was the same. I'd only seen the two trailers and avoided everything else, and it felt really good. In a weird way, though, because I think it was, I kept saying to myself the week of, I'm like, why am I not more pumped for this movie? Like, I kept forgetting the movie was coming out. Like, I'd get to the end of the day and I was like, oh, no, wait, Thor's tomorrow. But I think part of that was helpful because it didn't have me like accidentally clicking on anything. Like, I'd see some mention and be like, nope, all right, scroll past it. So it's like I kept just trying to push it out of my mind. It was very interesting. But yeah, way better than the amount of spoilers we got for Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
We get some great scenes in this opener. We get Thor riding Stormbreaker like a broom. That was so, and him just like falling. I was like, oh, classic gag where he just like, but then he zooms around in the corner. I was like, oh no way, it's actually like a witch's broom. So great with the little the roots sticking out of the front of it too.
Yeah,
it's been planted so long. What did you think of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
I know a lot of people didn't like him in this, but I did, because the last time we saw Thor, he was with the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I feel like we needed them in this to show where he's been, what he's been doing, and how he's going to continue on the way he does.
Yeah.
And, it was a quick, I mean, they were in it, what, 4 minutes, 5 minutes
yeah,
tops?
It wasn't a lot.
Like, the best part of all of it was the speech that Star-Lord gave to him. And then when Nebula wanted to shoot the goats immediately,
I'm going to put them down. And then, yeah, Mantis was like, me too. And then grabbed another gun. Yeah. And I think that to me was the funniest goat moment. Obviously, all the screams were great, but just from them giving the goats and they like come out from behind the rock and just start screaming. Yeah. And then the literal next scene is the one goat's face right up to the camera screaming inside the ship, and everything's getting kicked and you can't hear what anybody is saying and like, I got mad the first viewing because I was like, did they do this on purpose? Like, I can't hear what they're saying. But then the second time I was like, yeah, that's totally on purpose. And it works so well. Like, they're just pure chaos. The definition of Taika Waititi.
For sure. And even with the speech of, you need to feel kind of shitty, Star-Lord to Thor to feel something. And I love when they're leaving and Thor's like, take the ship. As
you can take my ship.
You can take good care of her. And he's like patting it on the side, and he's like,
she's a temperamental old lass.
And then he's like, oh, it's my ship, so I'm gonna take it. But
yeah, and then he's like, all right, yeah, we're leaving. Kraglin, just start the ship, please. And
Kraglin getting married was
getting married. Yeah,
Kraglin, what did I tell you about getting married to someone on every planet we go to?
Not to do it. Yeah,
it was cool seeing him. I didn't know he was going to be in it because I don't remember seeing him.
They kept mentioning it on something where it was like I kept seeing the Sean Gunn thing. I saw like a Kraglin thing, and I was like, I don't remember seeing him in the trailer. Did you notice the bit when he was in the water and he whistled and like a stick went up his nose?
No.
I was like, so is that like, does he not have his arrow? I don't know. I agree with the people who didn't like Guardians there. I liked seeing them. I thought they were completely unnecessary, but in retrospect, looking back, I thought it was completely comic booky, though, that they were there. Because like you said, that's your through line getting you from the last place. Yeah, they're only there for 5 minutes. They don't do anything really meaningful. But that happens in the comics where it's like, oh, there's Spider-Man on the other panel talking to you, and he just cracks a joke and then leaves. Like,
right.
I thought that was the coolest thing. Marvel has the ability now to be like, oh, we're just going to bring, what is it, like 8 famous actors into this scene for 5 minutes and then pay them and make them leave. Like, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, again, going back to the speech that Quill and Thor have, Thor remembers it, takes it to heart of what he's saying,
Yep.
because then later on the boat, he tells Jane, he goes, "I want to feel shitty with you." She's
Yeah.
like, "What?"
Yeah.
And then he's like,
I'm not saying this right, am I? None of this
But
is going right.
I mean, so in that aspect, if they're not there to have that speech, like I guess you could have somebody else having that speech with him, and it not
Who
be
though?
Quill.
No, I don't think anyone else would be able to give him that speech because Valkyrie hasn't had any important relationships to share that we know of, right? Like she wouldn't be able to give that speech. She'd be the closest one, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they were necessary in some aspects, but unnecessary in others. So
yeah. Again, overall, very welcome that they were there.
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie so much that I can pick some nitpicks, but I don't want to.
Exactly, and that to me, that was my lesson coming out of it on the second viewing. Was I was like, there are things that I don't like about this movie, but none of it gets in the way of me liking this movie. Like It's all like whatever, okay, that's fine. I mean, again, it's just a movie, and it's still. I ended up. We'll talk about if we have any rankings, and I do have a ranking at the end of this. But
okay.
Okay. Was there anything else I wanted to touch on this? Just looking at my notes. No, that was it. So from there, they get onto the ship. That's the segue to the next bit is, and I actually was kind of shocked by this, and you could tell that this is one of those classic get the actor to stare at a blank screen while we superimpose tech onto it. And he goes, all right, let's take a look at all of the distresses. And it's like clocking up. It's like 1,400.
Yeah.
And he just keeps looking at it. And then he's like, wow, we've got a lot of distress. I'm like, he would have been like, whoa, what's going on? Like, do you not see how many? Like, he clearly did not know what was on that screen, which is fine. But we see a ton of distresses. Apparently, everyone's getting butchered. People are saying, he did it to send a message. The God Butcher's here, but we get a glimpse of Sif in a comics accurate Sif costume finally, saying, Thor, I need your help. And so that's what the breakaway is. So Korg and Thor and their goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, head off to Sif while the Guardians leave and we don't see them again. So the next scene that I had on here, though, was the Ballad of I guess this is still part of it. So basically just that the God Butcher is killing. So we get to see another really nice comics accurate scene of, I think his name is Falagir. It's either Falagir or Venegir that he says in the movie of another giant god that's dead.
One of the nicest gods you'll ever meet.
Yeah, and that's what it says in the panels too. Is he was like, it's one of the nicest gods you'll ever meet. And so he gets down there to Sif. And that, honestly, I wish we could have gotten more Sif, but for the Sif that we got, that delivery line of her saying, no, Thor, just leave me. I want to die on the field of battle so that I can be welcomed into Valhalla. Sif,
you have to
the battle is over.
In the battle.
Yeah, you have to die
like, your arm might be in Valhalla.
Your arm might be in Valhalla. And she gives him this look like, but so yeah, and then she says the same thing, right? Oh, it's the God Butcher, yada, yada, yada. And so he's like, all right, we need to get back to Asgard. And so they leave. We then transition over to our other main character, Jane Foster, who we see has cancer now. She's in treatment. I really loved this scene. I liked when she was sitting in the chair and the guys, of course, how convenient the person next to her in cancer treatment is reading her book.
Of course.
But we get a great line there of her saying, have you ever seen Interstellar?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that actually explains a lot. That made me really happy because Interstellar is one of my faves. But what did you think about this whole thing? We also get in here the very quick but also very welcome cameos of Darcy and Selvig, which was awesome. Again, both of them very fast, but I think I had no idea either of them were going to be in this movie. So I was just like, oh, cool, awesome. We get some nice little cameos. But then by the end of it, she hears the call of Mjolnir. So that's this scene. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a good job of just, quickly telling you, hey, she has cancer. She's in the MRI machine. I don't know if that's what it is. I think that's what it is. And then, her going through the chemo and like you said, sitting there talking to the guy and she's like, you like the book? He's like, I wrote it. And then ruins her own book and rips it out. And
ruin your own book.
The Eisen?
The Rosenbridge.
Rosenbridge.
Now you understand what a Rosenbridge is.
And I know Kat Dennings had denied being in this movie, denied, and then she just pops out. And I mean, it's easy for her. She's in it for a minute. Yeah. But I wish we would have gotten something of, sorry, I've been busy, dealing with the hex and all.
Oh yeah.
Just
Or like, what if she was still wearing her costume, the like circus one?
sorry,
She's
got
like,
here
I
as quick
actually
as I
can't take
could.
this off. I don't know how. It's made of this weird fabric.
It's just adhered to my skin. I don't know what's happening.
Though I think maybe to her credit, though, she probably was like, yeah, I don't want to kind of talk about my problems while Jane is sitting here in this chair getting the drip coming into her. But yeah, no, I'd have lost my mind. I can't even think of any, except now that they didn't even have a talk they should have about how she's a doctor now too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, good scene. Like you said, and then, she feels the call from Mjolnir, and then she starts going through the books when she's back at her lab, and then flipping through, and then it's like Mjolnir, and then it's like healing and all this kind of stuff. So
Health.
yeah. So you knew, and I accidentally,
I'm seeing what they're doing here. I'm connecting the dots.
yeah,
Okay.
I accidentally slipped up, and I told my wife, I said something. I was like, well, she has cancer, and then she was like, who has cancer? And I was like, nobody has cancer.
Oh.
And then she's like, well, you said she, so, and I was like, I don't think it did. I don't know what you're talking
about. Melissa McCarthy.
Yep. Right.
It's funny though. I feel like before the movie came out, we were all talking about like, are they going to do the cancer storyline or not? Like, do we think they're going to actually do it?
They had to.
And it did. If I was watching, it was like, there's no way that it would not have worked had they not done it.
Right, because then why is she there? Why?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you're going to take Gore the God Butcher, and then also have Jane Foster in it, like, what are you going to have her with cancer, but then Gore's not a God Butcher? Like,
right.
He's actually just running around trying to save the trees. Like, no, this isn't. You can't deviate. Yeah, you can't deviate too far.
But yeah, this isn't the Necro Sword; it's the Lore Axe.
Right,
that's what they'd call it, something like that. So from there, we flash back to now New Asgard, which has turned into a tourist trap. We get, which I heard someone talking about this in a video I was watching. Actually, I watched a Thor review on YouTube, and the ad for it was Old Spice, and I was like, "You have got to be kidding me!"
That's funny.
Like, they must have planned that. But we get infinity cones, and we also see a very loose intro to Axel in his room, which you don't know it in the first viewing, but in the second viewing, I was like, yep. And I saw on his wall, there's like a purple poster that says the Mad Titan and all this. And I don't remember who it was that was saying this, but they're like, why are they wanting this? Like, if the Mad Titan came and killed half of your people, but not just for them, right? He killed like almost all of Asgard because he got their ship. Why are we making an Infinity Gauntlet themed ice cream store? Why is there a Mad Titan? Like, why are we having posters of this guy? And I get maybe it's like, oh, because Thor cut off his head. But I was like, that's kind of interesting. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, I guess just everyone is just over the fact that everyone was gone for 5 years because most of them are just
very,
back now.
American in a way, right?
Oh, it is 100% American. It's like what, 2 weeks ago with everything that just happened, and then a week later, it's like, oh, it's 4th of July, so everyone loves America.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, yeah, then maybe
bring the potato salad over. We'll blow some shit up. Like, wait, what? There's protests going on every day at the Capitol.
We had a great video of there was a giant fire in my it was in Aurora. It was like North Aurora. And the firefighters are literally putting out the fire while fireworks are going off over their head from people shooting off the fireworks. It was absolutely insane.
Nice.
But yeah, so we get that. We see just like that too, and you could say King Valkyrie is selling out, but to me, this felt very noble. She is doing all of these things that are making her absolutely miserable, like Old Spice ads, boring meetings, Raven Mail, which I loved that bit. Meetings that could have been Raven Mail, and but she clearly hates all that. But she's doing it for her people, which they don't really dive into that at all. But it's clear. It's clear, like as a viewer, you're like she cares about her people, and I really liked that. It told a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, as she's sitting there just playing with her daggers, like
I love that.
Wanting to stab somebody, just.
But then we also get another, if we liked the greatest hits, another play with Matt Damon and is it Luke Hemsworth?
Yes.
And then Melissa McCarthy as Hela revisiting the scene where where Odin dies, which is pretty funny. We also got Melissa McCarthy's husband as the like stage manager or something like that.
He's in everything she's in.
I know. I love that too because they're probably like, Melissa, do you want to be in this? She's like, yeah, but I'm a 2-person package. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, we'll just make him we'll let him stand next to you on the stage. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Which was funny. I enjoyed it. I loved him spraying his face with the water before he died. And then they were like, what does he say? Like costume change or something when all their clothes get ripped off and they're in their cool gear.
I love.
We also get Daryl in this one.
Yes.
Which did you watch those, right?
Yes, I did.
That I was like, no way. But then we actually hear Val say Daryl, and I was like, oh, this is what that to me was full circle because I'm wondering that must mean Thor was like, hey, you're welcome to stay in Asgard now. You don't have to pay rent.
Right, because he was a terrible roommate.
Yeah, exactly.
I love how he used to put Mjolnir on the toilet seat.
Yeah, and then what was the one where the Grandmaster came and like dissolved his friend who was playing the guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I just watched an interview and they were talking about how that did, like you said, come full circle with Daryl, the idea to have him in there, because they were saying when they shot those, they were like, we could do whatever we wanted. There were no expectations. Those little, Marvel one-shot shorts. They're like, we didn't have to do anything. We could literally just do whatever we wanted. There wasn't a, started here, ended here type deal like, most of the movies are. And they were like, and then to be able to have Daryl be in the movie just became full circle, which is really
and
cool.
He was super. I love how professional he was because explaining here's the pieces of Mjolnir, they're immovable. Now let's go get some real Asgardian mead. And I was like, oh, he's got to be living his best life. Like they got the flying boats everywhere, and I love that there's like 8 cruise ships by the coast just chilling. That'd be the spot to go though. I'd take a cruise up there for sure.
Oh, for sure. I mean that's why they've got the Infinity Cones because they're making bank.
I mean, come on, you got 6 flavors, 6 different colors. Like,
right,
you can figure it out. I get it. But then the final bit of this scene is Jane is part of the group, and she's in the classic Marvel
disguise.
The classic Marvel disguise with no sunglasses or baseball cap though, just the hood. I like she's got the Converse too, but I don't know. And this is where I was like, okay. And we're going to be talking about this very soon about is Jane worthy, because this is something I've been putting a lot of thought to in the last day. But this scene I think is important because if it was her needing to pick up the hammer, I feel like she would have gotten in trouble in this scene because you saw there's like 5 guards. And I mean, if I'm a guard, I'm like, what is this lady like?
Also, who's she disguising herself from?
Right, like what's and she's like standing next to it and none of them can see that all of the rocks start to like move. I mean, I guess if I was the guard, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna take my break. Like I'm just gonna go now because something's about
I don't
to
get paid enough for this. I don't know what's going on.
Enough. Yep, no.
It'd be like Scourge and Ragnarok. Scourge and Ragnarok when he's supposed to be guarding the Bifrost, and then he's got the 2 girls and he's like, behold my stuff.
Yeah.
And then he's got the shake weights like
Yeah, that was great. But so that's, and I guess again we don't see any more, but we assume at this point we're about to be seeing some more thunder. So that takes us to the next scene, which is Asgard at night. Gore shows up, super creepy. Reminds me of the Nun. Is my like with the gold eyes and the hood and just the spookiness of it all,
and just kind of creeping from point A to B, just like there, and then people walk past and not there, and then I mean I liked his powers, I guess, to just be able to kind of disappear or just kind of fall into the earth and then just appear.
He just like owns the shadows basically, so he can like travel through shadow, which is really cool. There
was a PS3 game that was like that, where basically like I'll have to. I mean,
was it Shadowrun?
No,
it can't be. I don't think it was.
No, it was something creepy where like you had tentacles, which kind of remind me of Venom, but you basically like traveled through the shadows. Like otherwise, like you'd get caught, and then it was. I'd have to look it up. I don't have it up.
Interesting. Yeah, you're gonna have.
It would have been nice if I, wrote that down as a note to talk about it, but
that's fine. I'm not bringing you back, so it's not that big a deal.
Cool. All right. Sorry, everybody.
Bye, everyone. I'm actually going to kick you right now. But super scary. I thought the shadow monsters were really scary too. Very creepy looking. It was like a mix of, some of them looked like insects or spiders, and then other ones looked like wolves. So I loved that. There's definitely some creativity there. I don't know if that was like Gore's choice or if those are the creatures of the Shadow Realm. I have no idea. But we get a really great, and this would be our second. We didn't even really talk about it from the first one, but I love that opening fight scene. The one set to Welcome to the Jungle. Oh man, Thor was just destroying stuff when he chucks Stormbreaker and it just busts through everything. When he's got his legs up against the two different things and he's screaming at them. And then he gets called the God of Destruction because he destroyed their entire temple. And those creatures were hilarious too. They look like owls. They look like owls.
Yeah, the chicken people.
Yeah.
I died when he, talking about the temple. He goes, "Do you want to talk about the temple?" We don't want to talk about it. I think we should talk about it. We don't want to talk about it.
But if we were to talk about it.
But here's a gift. And then it's the goats. They clearly
I'm starting to get very sad and very angry. Take the goats and leave. You could almost tell, though, that they also didn't want those goats.
They absolutely did not want those goats.
Get rid of these goats.
And then they're magnificent. Yeah, he's absolutely in love with the goats.
Oh, and then that's when, and Korg's got that great line, too. And I hear you can get them with a special whistle. It's just like out of nowhere. Oh, you knew about these goats? Okay. But then, of course, can't get the whistle. So, yeah, we get to our second fight. This fight was pretty cool. Only thing that I don't think worked for me was that it was so dark. I could barely see any of the fighting, but the bits that I could see were great. We got to see Valkyrie get some cool kills in her PJs, which was a Phantom of the Opera t-shirt and some like sweat shorts, which were great. And then there's the lightning, and we see the hammer kind of flying around. And Mjolnir, come here, boy. And he's like, "Who's the new guy?" And she goes, "Oh, you're gonna like the new guy." And then we see that it's Jane Foster, and she's in the perfect gear. She takes her helmet off immediately. We didn't have to wait 8 issues like we did in the comics to find out who it was.
Right.
And then we get the building just like collapses in the front of them. He's got his big helmet on because he's trying to look cool. I love that the helmet gets created and then a little more gets extended on top of it.
Yeah.
And we get a great flashback. We get to see everything that we wanted to see between Jane and Thor, their romance, how it worked, and then eventually how it didn't work. We get the reveal of Nick Fury as the phone number that he has saved.
When did he get a cell phone?
Right, and where's he been keep? I mean, I guess he kind of didn't he have one in those shorts?
Maybe.
Isn't there a bit where he's like talking about calling Tony Stark?
Maybe, yeah.
It's just something, but I feel like even in that one too, I was like, why does Thor have a cell phone?
Because I remember, isn't there a line in one of the points where somebody's like, "Oh, we'll call you," and he goes, "I don't have a phone."
Okay, that's something that we'll probably need to talk about. There's a couple of contradictions in this movie, blatant from Ragnarok alone, just from Ragnarok, which surprises me since Taika has full control. I think that's in that one where he goes, no, have you ever heard of an electronic mail or whatever? He tells him to send him an email. But then we also get the bit about Korg where he says his mom and her boyfriend, when he's talking about the revolution, Brian brought that up.
Yeah.
But apparently all of them are men, so that doesn't work. And then there was another one, too, another thing that was mentioned that was like, wait a second. So I don't know. That's interesting. But
yeah, at the same time, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, really, but pick it might have been the amount of years that he said, because she goes, how long's it been? Like 4 years, 8 years, 6 months, 7 days. And I don't remember who said it of like, oh, but if you trace this back to this, it's like, just enjoy the movie. It's not, maybe they did, maybe they looked at an exact date, but I don't think so.
And we don't know if she got blipped or not.
Good point. Yeah.
Because to her, it could have been 3 years if she was gone for 5.
That would have been a really unique opportunity to say it, too. If we're going to be like, well, I did dust away for a little bit sort of thing. Or maybe she didn't. I don't know. Maybe. Was she on the Endgame list of people on the screen? Because I think I'm gonna have to check again because I feel like
didn't she have I thought she did a voice cameo for one of them.
For one of what?
One of either Infinity War or Endgame.
No, they used some of the Dark World footage.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was
then.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else in here that was scary. That she can break apart the hammer into pieces.
I loved it.
So perfect. Absolutely
I loved it.
Perfect.
It was like that perfect evolution of, Thor has Mjolnir and then he all of a sudden doesn't. Then he gets this bigger, better weapon with Stormbreaker. And then now Mjolnir's back well, you don't want to just make it the same thing. It felt very much just like, you power up, weapons in a video game. The further you get along, you get all these different attributes that you want to add to your weapon and whatnot. And it felt like, the next stage that still kept Mjolnir really cool looking, with all the, the lightning and the blue that you could see behind the cracks, but then made it just a really fresh take on it. So I thought that was really cool.
Absolutely. Just incredible. And I think, is this, we're in this spot right now. So yeah, got that romance. So here's where we'll talk about it. So Thor tells Mjolnir, and I think he's probably had some this was like Halloween night or something, but he says, I need you to promise me that you'll always protect her. And then the triquetra lights up on the side, and that is not what happens in the comics. And so here's my duality on this, because I'm still struggling with it. I, at first, was not a fan of this, because to me that means Jane wasn't worthy on her own. She needed a man to tell her, to like give her special treatment with the hammer, right? Like, oh, I need to have my boyfriend be the one to protect me, sort of thing, which didn't work too well, at least in thinking about it afterwards. I didn't think about it much in the movie. But then, like I said, okay, well, if she was, what's she going to do? Pick up the hammer in the middle of Asgard? Like, I don't think that would have worked for her to just show up and do it. I think Mjolnir called to her because Thor put that protection on it. So it was almost like it's weird to say like okay, I'll let it slide sort of thing, because we're going to talk about this bit too. When they're on the boat, Thor tells Jane, which I thought was and I'm in the same boat as you, man. I love the first Thor movie. That's one of my favorites of that original set of movies. And he says, like, when we first met, you made me worthy. And I loved that line. Like, I got goosebumps when I heard it, because I was just like, she did. Like, as much as we didn't, there's not a lot of romantic development and all this stuff, like, she kind of helps him. She's the person that he finds and kind of helps him along with his way to becoming worthy of the hammer. So in a sense, Jane didn't need to be, she already was worthy of lifting the hammer, probably in Thor from that perspective. But it still was just an interesting choice for them to do the whole, like, oh, you need to protect her sort of thing. What do you think about that, though?
Yeah. I guess I kind of, I didn't think about it in, watching it. I'm thinking about it now, but it almost seems like what you said, by him saying protect her at all costs was almost the reason why she saw those books, and that she saw the health, and she saw, thought to even seek out Mjolnir, because at what point, why would she even think
she
of
wouldn't
that?
have known.
So almost just like it calling to her was the help that Thor had asked for from Mjolnir, of the keeping her safe. That's how I'm taking it, because I don't want to get into the whole political of, oh, she can only do it because a man helped her, but I don't think that they even would have thought that.
I don't think so either. And I think too, I think if she wasn't a good person or someone who was worthy to lift the hammer, I don't think it would have called to her anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I think
and
it's a pretty discerning tool. Like,
it's an easy line to insert to kind of battle the argument of, well, that's convenient, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it kind of leans to the ridiculousness of Taika as well. Of like, this, it's a Taika Waititi joke. So
right.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. All right.
So
argument squashed. I like it. We're busting through.
The best part of all that was them roller skating.
Oh,
and he's holding Mjolnir out, and it's pulling them along. That was the best part of their relationship.
Okay, and at the end of this bit too, we see that all of the children of Asgard have been taken in the Howl's Moving Castle little Barnum and Bailey circus thing that disappears into the shadows as well, which was kind of creepy. We also get a great line here of them explaining the note. He's like, well, it's a handwritten note, blah, blah, blah. Well, but you left. And she goes, all right, Fold, we both left and we both got left. And now you're leaving again. Like, oh, I love that. Gotta have the last word. Always gotta have the last word. But that's great. So, yeah, we'll move next one. So now it's time to get the kids back. I liked that. I was not expecting it. It was shocking to me, though. I was like, oh, wow. Like, Gore is basically just capturing kids now, and I guess that just shows how far he's been corrupted because of how much he loved his daughter. But we get that great line too, where he's like, I knew somebody who she loved to draw. I liked that line when he's kind of when he's ripping the head off of that snake. Oh, you liked this a second ago?
You're right.
That was really good. He ate up the screen time. I thought every time that he was on screen, Christian Bale was so like
he was so good,
zany.
He turned the role down multiple times until his kids talked him into it.
Really?
Yeah. His
and
kids
they said,
like,
but once you get in, you got to make sure we're in the movie too.
Yeah. Well, so I've out of
my notes, list,
which is upside down. So Chris Hemsworth's son Tristan is the young Thor that is running at the beginning. Okay. His wife is the woman that he's kissing on top of the werewolf.
That's right. Yep.
His daughter is Gore's daughter, aka Love, and then Portman's, I think, 2 kids, Waititi's 2 kids, and then Bale's son were all kids of Asgard that were kidnapped by Gore.
Nice.
So basically, like everyone, it was like bring your kid to work day for the most part. So it was just like, yeah, bring your kids to work. We don't have to pay them, and they can be in the movie. But how creepy would that be if you're Christian, if your dad is sitting in front of you, breaking the neck of a CGI snake, just being creepy as all get out? I'd be like, I don't know about this, Dad.
And he'd be like, it's your fault that I'm here.
Right. You see this makeup I had to put on? This is your fault.
This is all your fault.
Yeah, his kids talked him into it because I guess he likes to have a lot of time in between filming movies, and I guess he had 3 days from when he finished filming it in LA to quarantine and get to Australia.
Wow.
And then go about all the quarantine process. So his kids talked him into it. So I guess thanks.
I've noticed that a lot. I think a lot of people in the MCU would not be here if it wasn't for their kids.
Yeah, I know. Well, and what's funny is to hear, like, even Chris Hemsworth's kids are like, yeah, you're Thor, cool, I don't care. Like, whatever. Like, I like Captain America. Or I like Tony Stark. Like, he's dope. Like, yeah, but your dad's pretty cool, too. He's like, yeah, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, yeah you're there, but...
can't get no respect.
Yeah.
So we get one of the other best gags of the movie, which is the jealous hammers. And this happens 3 times, I think, in this short brief part. We get him like in the town hall, just like slowly holding his hand out to try and get Mjolnir, and then Stormbreaker just comes, hey, I was just calling for you. That's perfect. And then from there he's like, all right, I'm gonna go get these kids back. I'll be right back. And he shoots up and then immediately flies back down into that building. And they're like, they see him and they're like, oh my goodness. And he comes and he's like, I couldn't find them. And they're like, when your cape's on fire, it'll grow back.
Okay. It'll grow back. God, just so funny. And then even after when he does talk to Axel through the, which is Heimdall's son, and he talks to him through whatever they call it, I don't remember.
It's like the Heimdall's eyes or something.
Yeah, and then he's like, see, I'm not here. And he's like waving his hand through him.
Oh, yeah.
And then he comes back and be like, how are the kids? I mean, they're scared. They're kids in a cage. So
yeah. That's okay. If any of you die, you will go to Valhalla.
Right.
That's great.
Warriors of Asgard.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, and then but we also get the one where he actually does lift Mjolnir afterwards when they make the plan. And he's like, just making sure, and then hands it back, and then Stormbreaker immediately was right there.
Pans in from the side.
I couldn't stop laughing. It was so, and not a bit of dialogue. Like that is the masterful Taika Waititi at work.
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
so great. But yeah, like you said, so he uses Axel's eyes to find out that they're in the Shadow Realm, which is just added to the list of realms that exist in the Marvel universe because there are a lot. But then, they build the goat boat. So we figured that out. They just use one of the ride boats. I don't know why, but I love the scene where Valkyrie just rips one of the chairs off of the boat and just throws it off. And she's like, only the things we need. What that we need? The giant thing.
Yeah, the booze.
Yep. Yeah.
That we need.
And then this actually, we got a great scene in this one too, where Jane, we find out, so that I think what we find out, it's not super clear, but essentially Mjolnir is sapping her of her power. which
Mm-hmm.
technically shouldn't be happening because it gives you great health. So I read it the same as the comics, which is that when she is, using the power of Thor or whatnot, it essentially is wiping her body of all of her cancer treatment, because it's like that's what cancer treatment is, right? It's radiation in your body. And
Mm-hmm.
so it basically is cleaning your body out, which is the exact opposite of what you want. And so we get to see, she drops the hammer, she gets mad and then smacks the sink and breaks it. And Valkyrie shows up. And I love that, again, just like in Ragnarok too, where she's just like, shows her one sword and then she's got the two knives.
Yeah.
And then she's got, what is it? Oh, you've got a grenade. She's like, nope.
It's a Bluetooth speaker.
Oh, that was so good. And then and then they cheers their weapons together, which was great as well. They were a great duo. We saw a good bit with them together, but again,
Mm-hmm.
I need like a series.
I think there's going to be more. I think there's going to be a lot of deleted scenes for this.
Ooh, good point. That's a really good point. So from there, their decision is, let's go to Omnipotent City to recruit some gods to help our cause to get these kids back. And lo and behold, we are again proven that Gore might be right, might have a point, because these gods are jerks. Mm-hmm. But we definitely Zeus, and I know I got a note in there too. I think my favorite line of his was "So stay, have some wine, have some grape," and don't. He's like, well, now you must stay, and then his whole thunderbolt and doing his little
oh my god, yes, just dancing around when he comes out with his skirt. And he's just holding it.
So good. He was eating up those scenes too. I thought it was a Greek accent. I didn't think it was the best Greek accent, but I was like, I kind of can see what they're going for. Yeah. But everyone else was like, that's not a Greek accent. I'm like, I kind of agree with that too. It's kind of interesting. I wonder, no one gave him notes?
No, it's Taika Waititi who's probably like, do whatever you want, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, but we see here's some lists for all of us Easter egg hunters out there, and I typed these out from IMDb. The Bow God, that was one of the bits where I was like, really? But I went with it because I love Bow, both the food and the short. But I was just like, that took me out of the movie because I was like, is that referencing a Pixar movie in a
the little animated thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know what that was.
So I was like, okay, is that okay? But it worked. It was kind of funny. But we got Aztec, we got Dionysus, we got Mayan gods, Elche, Artemis, Minerva, goddess of the dead, and then Jade Mirai, which is that giant samurai guy that he had to get past at that one point. But we also got some Celestials too, which was really interesting. And I was like, Celestials, though, they kind of looked small. I figured they'd be bigger than the place, or that maybe they were in charge. I guess we still need some more lessons on what where the Celestials kind of fall in the pantheon of things, because technically I guess they are a type of god, but they seem to be the only god that's actually doing anything in terms of actually creating universes and destroying universes. But what did you make of the whole Omnipotent City scene?
I mean, it was fun. I loved, when they were sitting there, I've got a plan. Well, no, let's talk to him first. And then it was like, can we do my plan now? And then they're like, yeah. And then they go and they start attacking everybody. And then Korg's like, you never said go.
Yeah. Wait, what's the signal? Go.
Yeah. I like seeing the Cronin. That's what Korg is, correct?
Yep.
I love seeing the other Cronin there on the throne of scissors.
Yeah,
which was a good Easter egg from.
I didn't catch that on my first. I saw the scissors, but I was like, what does that mean? And then someone said, I'm like, oh, that's another great joke.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, I'm pretty sure those were scissors. And then afterwards, when somebody else said it was, I was like, okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, just we all thought that Zeus was going to be a goner. I did not think that Thor was going to be the one to essentially, kill him, even though he didn't really. Because you just assume that it was going to be Gore. You don't have Russell Crowe in a movie like this and then expect him to be in 3 movies. But so that was a shock when, Thor's the one who just throws the lightning bolt through him. I did love Zeus kind of taunting him, like, what are you the god of? Oh, the god of sound of mine.
What is thunder but just lightning or something?
Yeah, the sound of my lightning. So that was pretty cool. When he his tattoo on his back, which was the R.I.P. Loki.
Yeah.
There's also our friend Ryan posted something earlier that I saw. It has a list of everyone who's passed. It said mother, father, Loki, Heimdall, Tony, and Natasha.
Yeah.
So he had the list of everyone who's passed in his life. Yeah, I mean, it was a fun scene. You know, I thought for sure Korg was a goner, and I like gasped. I'm like, ah! And then when he's still talking, and then he just picks up his face like he's just a mask now,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. And I've learned to like Korg. And when he died, I will admit that I did get a little excited just because I was waiting for something like, and that's a nitpick that I have of this as we'll get through it, is that nobody dies. Like there's no real death in this movie. Everyone kind of gets away with it. And so when that happened, I was like, that makes sense. Like, but then I didn't realize how much people are fans of Korg. And then when, he started talking, I was like, oh yeah, of course he's not dead. He's still alive. And now he's just a face. But it was hilarious when she tied him with her braids to the back of her head.
Like a
Now you can
mustache.
watch my six. And he looks like he's got a little mustache and has to do the little whistle. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I was gonna say something that I totally lost my train of thought.
Was it from the fight? And there we now have our third fight, which is this fight.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say it. So for having Gore the God Butcher, there wasn't much violence in this, which I'm really curious to know if. And I did hear a rumor that there was a scene shot with Christian Bale and Peter Dinklage as Eitri. And then I also heard there was a scene with Christian Bale and Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster. And I'm curious to know if Marvel noticed any backlash from the amount of violence in Doctor Strange 2. Because when she absolutely lays waste to the Illuminati and just crushes people and cuts them in half and blows their brains out, you would think you would get some of that from a God Butcher. The only thing you really see is him stab the god at the beginning, and then you don't really see much else. I mean, you obviously see some corpses of that giant creature that he had killed, but
you never see him do it.
Yeah, so I'm surprised at the lack of violence.
And maybe that was a piece that I had struggled with too, and I couldn't put it to words. But you're right. I was expecting. I mean, you see some of it in the message distress signal thing, right? Like there was a couple bodies hanging from things, but again, I was like, oh, so we're gonna be seeing some stuff, and we don't. Really see anything.
We didn't. I mean, like it seemed like he was more. Gore was more creepy in everything that he did than intimidating. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, because I was never like intimidated by him. I was just scared.
Yeah.
I think are two different things.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, the Riddler in Batman versus Bane. Like the Riddler is, I guess in the last one, he's pretty violent, but like Bane is a formidable force. Just breaks Batman's back. And the Riddler is like, I got a puzzle for you.
Exactly.
I mean, two totally different things. So, Thor's definitely seen some villains that he's gone against, but it's never been anybody that's like, I'm not too worried about him.
Speaking of cut scenes, we did not get the Gore scene of him going as like all the goo came out of his mouth when he's like doing that creepy smile, the Uncle Fester one that's like a meme now. That was not in the movie, nor was the hotly debated one of, there's a third person in that scene that they've CGI'd out. That was not a scene either. Unless it was the goats.
If it's the same scene if we're talking about the same scene, I remember the scene when Korg and Thor are standing there watching the Guardians fly off.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that was in the movie, but that everyone was like, "Oh, this is obvious. There's a third person."
Right, like that there was a scene. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I thought you were saying there was a scene that.
No, yeah, just
that wasn't in the movie.
Anything.
Okay.
Yeah, which again, I don't think it really did kind of look like it in the trailer though. So I don't think those people were wrong to try and guess it, because it was like that looks. Why are they like it was framed weird?
Yeah, like that looks like Jane should be there or somebody else should be there. Yeah, and I had heard that the Grandmaster was in it. So then when the movie ended. And then the credit scenes come up, and the first one didn't have him. I'm like, well, Like, I wasn't exactly excited because I was like, well, now I know what the third one is. And then he wasn't in it, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I read a rumor that
That's a
somebody
good
ran
point.
with.
I feel like I thought that too, but there were some people that I think we thought were going to be in here and didn't show up at all.
Maybe that was the point.
Hey, I'd rather that. I'd rather it be us guessing if the Grandmaster is going to be in it than knowing that Professor Xavier is going to be in it.
Right. Which I didn't know.
From here at the end of this bit, which again was like I thought, but Marvel apparently, again, that's the thing too. You got to remember, it's comics. No one dies. But Zeus is killed, and they take his Thunderbolt and fly off to the Shadow Realm. And so we get another great scene of Thor projecting to the kids. And he keeps like going at his nose because Valkyrie put her hair to his nose. I thought that was great. And he's like, and this is a lesson why you never meet your heroes, because he was so, obsessed with Zeus. But I love that because Axel's like, I'm glad I met mine, which was a great line. But he says like, we're on our way. We're getting there. We're close. We get a great conversation between Thor and Jane on the boat, like we were saying earlier, about how you made me worthy. The space dolphins that is very, very beautiful, very rare. They mate for life in groups of six.
I thought we were going to get space sharks.
I know. I was expecting it to be space sharks.
We were going to get space sharks, and we didn't. And
even space whales would have been pretty cool, but hey. Maybe it got cut. I'm telling you, maybe that's what everyone said with Doctor Strange too. Maybe there was a 2.5 hour cut that exists out there somewhere, and it's just space scenes, which would be totally fine with, because that visually that was gorgeous. Of just
it was
the nebulas, and then from there there's a quick conversation as well with Korg and Val, which was nice. Just kind of again setting expectations of where they're at. Like I said, I would have loved to have seen something, but we get the explanation that Val's been through some people, isn't really trying to do anything right now, but Korg makes the comment of, oh, that's why you drink, to forget all of that stuff. And she's like, something like that. And then we also find out that in Korg's, his species, they procreate by two of them going into the lava, holding hands for, was it a month? And then at the end of that month, a new baby boy is born. Which again goes back to that thing of like, okay, he said it's two dads, and then he says it's a baby boy. So my assumption being the whole species is male. Yet again, in the last one, he said that he had a mom who had a boyfriend. So
yeah,
I'm not curious enough to ask or need any more info on it, but we're pointing it out anyway. But it was still that whole bit was still pretty funny, and he's singing that like made up song too about wanting to see your rocks or something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And then also we get Thor going to Stormbreaker and saying like, "Hey, how about your first beer?" And pours his beer and rubs his chin a little bit.
We're okay, right?
Yeah, we're okay, right? Oh yeah, but that was the other one where he starts playing with Thunderbolt, and all of a sudden you see the boat shake a little bit, and Stormbreaker like did something is like, actually, this would look so much better with you, Valkyrie, and like, just insane.
Yeah.
Which all crescendos into them getting to the planet. How do they get to the planet?
Just face planting goats right into it. How big was that planet?
I was tricked. I was like, ooh, nice, like, and then just and they just hit the farm. Like, oh, it's a little tiny planet. Oh, that was great.
I did love the moment where they all go, "Where did the color go?"
Yes.
As they're approaching, and then they say, "Where did the color go?" And then you get this like real creepy moment, and then just goes crashing right into it immediately.
And I love too, like, I don't know how the gravity works, but it was like they went head into it, and then the boat just sat on the side, like perfectly flat, which was great. So now we're on a black and white shadow planet where they go to fight Gore. Kids aren't there. He captures all of them and uses their weaknesses against them, I guess. But in the end, he stabs Val with the Thunderbolt, which, again, I'm like, no way that she's dead. And then it was like, okay, she's not dead. And then same with Thor. He, like, weakens her, I guess. So she drops her hammer, and so now she's kind of weak. And so Thor, and it was funny on the second viewing, there's a guy sitting next to me. Come on, let's get back to Asgard. Are you stupid? Is what the guy like yelled out. So like, why are you? And then like Gore grabbed onto the hammer, and he goes like, "Of course, I was like, dude, I want to be like, dude, it's a movie. Like,
Right.
we know that that's what's going to happen in a 2-hour movie. But still creepy. I thought that scene was super scary. The fight was awesome against those monsters. There was a bit where Jane goes to get Valkyrie and she's like skidding on her knee as she gets like right next to her. And then there's some great bits where she like explodes a creature with the hammer through the pieces, which was awesome. But I will say, and I've heard some people saying, oh, it's so cool whenever they use the magic, that's when the color shows up. No, whenever they use the magic, like the corner of the cape is red. There was like still no color. And so that's where I was like, so we just had a fight at night. And now we've got another fight basically at night that you can't really see anything. And again, it wasn't a bad fight and I enjoyed it a lot more the first time, but I just kept wishing like, I was hoping it would have been like a burst of color and then go back to black and white, which would have been really visually arresting of like he smacks Gore and then the whole screen goes color and then goes back to black and white. That would have been cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Christian Bale on this scene just, I mean, that's acting,
Absolutely.
to be that creepy. And I mean, he just did a great job. I mean, you couldn't take your eyes off of him in that whole scene. So
I'll call the axe when you call the dentist. Got him, Thor. We got him.
So bad.
How about the scene though when he's got Stormbreaker and he's just walking and then the sword comes up out of the ground on the other side and both of the weapons are just being drug on the ground as he's walking. That was so cool.
Yeah. Because I think in the trailer you see him with the sword, but you don't see him with the axe.
Yeah, you're right.
Or I just made that up.
There's a couple cool bits too. I loved when like anything like tracked onto the ground would kind of burst, but it was like slow-mo gravity as it floated up, like all the dirt pieces. That was really cool. Also, I loved when Jane, figures out that Stormbreaker is the key and just grabs it and throws it into space. I thought that was so
I love how he goes, why did you just throw my axe?
Yeah. Why did you just? Oh, it was so good. But yeah, great. Like I said, great fight. Wish it would have been a little brighter, but in terms of, all the fights are the same. There's your point of reference of no, they're not. Like that was a really cool looking fight.
Right.
And so from there they land back in Asgard and now everyone's basically down for the count. So Jane is back in the hospital. I don't know why. I really liked when the doctor is like, it's not blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, Thor. And like puts her arm on his thing. I was just like a regular old doctor. Like I loved how she just took it completely serious. She was not fangirling over him at all.
Right.
Thought that was great. But yeah, so she's now at the point where if she picks up Mjolnir again, she's going to die. Thor delivers some goodies from a fridge that didn't have a door.
Some moron built a refrigerator with no door.
I've got you some goodies. And so, yeah, and another really sweet scene, though, where he says, but, because I don't want you to go because I love you. She's like, well, what happened to there being no tomorrow? He's like, well, that's until I realize there may not be until tomorrow. But I like how he was like, I want us to be able to figure things out. Like, I want to be able to help you. And we can't do that if you're just going to die. So I got that. But I got her perspective, too, of like, don't count me out. I know you think I'm just some cool scientist from New Mexico. Natalie Portman, I know we've been talking a lot about it, but she was amazing in this movie. She did so good. She was having such a fun time. I loved her whole I'm thinking of a catchphrase and she's like, oh, I'm still workshopping it. I'm gonna go check things out, and then she just runs away. That was after she was like, so do you have a boyfriend or anything? He's like, no, you should. Nah, I'm gonna go look at things, and then like just leave. Really, oh, do you still rollerblade?
Right.
Oh yeah, every weekend. Yeah. Once you blade, you never fade. Yeah. And then what does he say? Skate boys for life or something like that.
Yeah.
So good. But yeah, so she's out. Val's also out. She says, I can't fight because then I die. Which, again, did she not 4 scenes ago say that she wanted to die in the heat of battle for Valhalla?
Yeah.
Maybe she didn't want to die because she knows she's going into her own series. That's literally all that's hanging, like my hope is hanging on, is that we're just going to get to see her. I pre-ordered her Funko Pop, man. I only pre-ordered hers and Gore. Well, I pre-ordered all the Janes, but then hers and Gore. And now I'm like, man, should I have even pre-ordered her Funko Pop? Because like she was barely in it, but she was good. I just wish
I've got Thor, Gore, and then the Mighty Thor, the glow in the dark one
Oh,
from
nice.
Hop in a Box, I believe.
Did you do the goat boat?
I did, and I have the goat boat coming.
Nice.
So
They
I know
should have a thing in there where you press a button and it screams.
I'll make it to where
You
it
should.
screams.
That'd be great. Okay, yeah, but so then and this was the other thing too that was interesting. They don't explain it. I don't think it needs an explanation, but he just grabs the thunderbolt and like crouches, and then it teleports him straight to where he needs to go, which good for him. I guess maybe it's because he's the god of thunder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't.
It's
It didn't take me out of the movie. I was just like, oh, that's convenient. Like, perfect.
Yeah.
It takes you right there. But that was cool. So we get to this is like the gates of eternity, basically, and he's kind of creating it, I guess, getting to it. But it's this real Gore is, and we get to see some great statues. We see the Living Tribunal, Infinity, who is like the opposite of eternity, Lady Death, a Celestial, and the Watcher, which was nice to see. Again, we're so close to getting that live action version, Little Bill, as Maya would call it. But yeah, so at this point in time, Gore has kind of planted Stormbreaker into the ground to unlock the gates of eternity. And all the kids are there, so he empowers all of the kids with the power of Thor. I loved that bit.
Temporarily.
For a limited time only. The power of Thor. But I love that too, because he's like, just go grab something. It doesn't matter what it is. And I was like, are you really making these kids go into battle? And then it was like, oh no, they all have that was so good. And
the girl that had the stuffed animal.
The stuffed animal. Ah! And then there was another one where she like had it was like a fairy wand, and she just cut somebody in half. It was brutal, and Axel was pretty badass too. I mean, he catches Stormbreaker at the end and uses that to bring them all back, all the kids back. I loved that. When they got to that point, he just throws Stormbreaker, and the kids are gone. So it's like, all right, they're safe. We do not have to worry about these kids getting hurt anymore. Thank goodness. Which was nice. But of course, as Thor's fighting Gore, things do not go well, and he needs a helping hand, which he gets from Jane. And he says, no, like, why are you doing this? But she's like, let's do it. And so they fight. Great fight. I thought that was awesome. I loved the bit where Mjolnir catches the pieces of the Necro Sword into it to try and prevent it from, and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So both of the weapons are the same, that they both can disassemble and then reassemble. But then she just, I guess, did you take it as that she just filled it up with so much lightning that it just broke it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did too, because I was like, what is she doing?
Enough. I mean, also, like, how did she get there? Like, how did she know where to go?
To the center of the universe, right?
But again, whatever.
I was like, take a left past the Infinity Cones.
Right.
It's right over there. There's actually a gateway in the back of the Infinity Cones that we take straight to the center of the universe. We've never met Eternity before, but whatever. But yeah, so they defeat him at that moment. So they get the sword. Sword's done. And and we also get, I noted that down too, when she says it's the mighty Thor, or if you can't say the mighty Thor, Dr. Jane Foster, and smash that down. That reminded me of when Thor was saying, bring me Thanos at the end of it, which was just.
And then didn't she yell, eat this hammer?
Eat this. Yes. But we still, and we'll get to it. I was going to say, we still don't know her other scene, but we get there. He saves the day, but just a tad too late. Stormbreaker did open up the door. Gore goes through it, but the other two also end up going in it as well. So they're there. Jane is now in her mortal form. She's dying. And we get some great bits of dialogue here. We get, he says something like, you can crave revenge or something like this, but what you crave is love. And he says, like, well, what kind of father would I be, though, if I didn't do this? Didn't do what I'm about to do, basically. Mm-hmm. But then Thor turns around, and I love that line where he's like, don't turn your back on me. And he's like, you're going to do whatever you want to do, so just go do it. I'm going to spend the last moments that I have with her. I'm choosing love. The way that he said that all was, it didn't hit the first time as well, because I was still laughing from some spots. But the second time around, I got emotional watching that scene. I was like, wow, this is really good stuff. And the Infinity grants him his wish, which is to bring his daughter back. But he's nervous. He says, but I'll die. And Jane basically says, like, she won't be alone. And Thor kind of nods. And so he says, protect her. And he says, I will. And so now Thor has lost Jane again as she wisps away to Valhalla. And this daughter of Infinity, who we're calling Love now, I don't think we've actually gotten a name unless it's going to be Love, as the new surrogate father, which is pretty exciting. Uncle Thor. What'd you think of that final scene?
I thought it was, a lot of people are complaining that the Gore's turn was way too easy for him to just be like, I want to call the gods, to, all right, I guess I won't. I'll just bring my daughter back and then make her watch me die. But yeah, I mean,
he didn't have the sword anymore, though.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Wanda chose a good path after she wasn't corrupted by the Darkhold anymore either. I mean, once that corruption's done, I think he maybe saw things a little more clearly afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as he went pale again and not cosplaying as Voldemort.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I thought, God, Thor has lost everybody. The guy cannot catch a break.
No.
But at the same time, when you knew, when this movie started with, Jane having cancer, you knew she wasn't going to make it out. You knew that it was going to set up to where she saves him and then sacrifices herself. And I mean, I don't want to say cookie cutter story, but I mean, you knew that was going to happen. That wasn't a surprise to a lot of people, I would imagine, that had any knowledge of this going into it. But, I thought, like you said, her calling him Uncle Thor, I loved her. And I get this from my own kids, where she's like, I'm wearing these slippers. And he goes, no, you're not. She goes, yes, I am. He goes, I don't want to hear about you complaining about your feet hurting later. And then only to come to find out that they were going out to train in a battle of something. But I'm like, no, that's literally my kid who's like, I'm going to wear tennis shoes and a raincoat. And that's
I love dressing myself.
And I'm like, dude, just put your shoes on. You're not wearing slippers to Target. What are you doing? But
we get the bit too of the go to hell, demon, and then she busts the hole in the pan. He's like, great, brand new, ruined. Love that.
Oh, that was funny. I forgot about that part. Yeah, and again, with this being narrated by Korg, who is a full person again, or full Cronin again. And when he finally says, this was the story of Love and Thunder, you're like, now I understand.
Yep. That was really cool.
Now I get it. You could just say, Spider-Man Far From Home, No Way Home. Like, oh, it's because he's far away from home. Or, oh, because there's going to be no way home for the multiverse. But then for them to be like, no, this is love. And then Thunder is like, oh.
Great reveal. And I did not guess that at all. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, why is it called Love and Thunder? And so when he said that, I was like, that's perfect. That's a perfect description. And she can hold Stormbreaker. How crazy is that?
Yeah, because then he has Mjolnir back, right?
Yes.
He has Mjolnir and she has Stormbreaker.
Crazy. Yeah.
So.
Loved that. And so from there, that's the movie. And so then we've got two post-credit scenes. We've got the first one, which is a reveal that Brett Goldstein, Mr. Roy Kent himself, is playing Hercules. Very pleased with that decision. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I was like giddy because I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. I knew our friend Brian was going to be just over the moon. I don't know if this was a big spoiler out there. I'm sure it was, just as, with anything else. But this was completely, just like Charlize Theron as Clea in Doctor Strange. Like, I didn't know she was going to be in it. I didn't know Brett Goldstein was going to be in it. Yeah. A lot of people wanted Henry Cavill.
That's Hercules.
Yeah, it's Hercules, from Superman to Hercules. But, Brett Goldstein, I don't want to say Marvel's jumping on the hot streak of, getting these, he's huge. I didn't know him from anything until Ted Lasso came out.
But that's all he's been in.
Oh, well, then that would explain why I didn't.
Yeah, I was like, I swear I've seen him before. And I looked him up, and there's nothing else I've seen him in.
Oh, okay. Well, so yeah, that should be exciting. I do know at one point Hercules was an Avenger.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hercules is big in the comics.
I don't know. I know, there's theories that this is going to be, superheroes versus the gods. I think this is just going to end up being Hercules. It's going to be like, you know what, you guys are kind of right. Zeus is kind of a jerk,
Yep.
and then just join in. But I mean, the world in the MCU is just getting bigger and bigger by the
Again, you're
moment.
like, what? How? Like how? What's happening?
Right.
How is
I
this
mean,
going to
to
connect?
think that we've got, even just from Phase 4, who they've introduced of Clea, now Hercules, Miss Marvel, uh, uh, Eros, and Eternals.
Yep. Eros and
Like,
Pip.
there's so many characters they're introducing now, and Blade, and Dane Whitman is the Black Knight. So I mean, there's so much, and it's never gonna end. Let's face it, it's
I
never gonna
know.
end.
And do we want it to be honest?
No.
I think we like the whole continuity of it all. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I'm really happy with that. I think based on again, only seeing him in Ted Lasso, he's the perfect Hercules for being very saucy and mean, but he also has a really sweet side too. And I felt the same way. Like they both have dad. That's one of the things they always joke about in the comics is like, oh yeah, your dad, pfft, my dad. Like both of them have really bad fathers, and so I feel like that'll be an instant connection for them.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. And then we get the final scene, which again, if if you were thinking that Jane was the only one who went through this movie dead, not the case. Dying is, I guess, as Imhotep would say, death is only the beginning, because she now shows up at the gates of Valhalla to be welcomed by Heimdall. Straight from the comics, though. In the comics, a very different story plays out. She comes back,
Yeah,
like
she's
the
not there
same
for
issue.
long.
The same issue she goes to Valhalla is the same issue she comes back, which is a mix of her not wanting to leave. She says, like, I still have more story to tell. And then Thor and Odin help her come back in.
Mm-hmm.
And so then basically her story in the comics from there, she just goes to get treatment for real now. Like she's not going to be Thor anymore. And so she goes through that and then eventually happens to become Thor again when, she's needed most. And then she becomes a Valkyrie. And that story was really cool too. But
Mm-hmm.
I loved this in the sense of like, I loved it both ways. I loved if this is the last we see of her, that is a perfect coda to this movie of like knowing that'd be like watching a movie and seeing someone die and the last scene being that they go to heaven, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so cool. But at the same time, because it's comics, if this is the scene saying we're going to see her again, that's just as great. So I'm cool either way they go with it.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see her again. I mean,
Because of Natalie Portman.
Yeah, I heard she worked out every day for 10 months to do this. And I don't know if she wants to keep doing that. I mean, she doesn't necessarily have to, with CGI and everything, but I mean, she was a beast in this as the Mighty Thor. So I don't know. I mean, she said she was done, and I wonder if this was just hey, you get to work with Taika, and we're gonna round out your story. I like that we got to see Heimdall again. As our friend Sarah we were talking, and she said that, the details that Taika, put in this movie is that we finally got to say goodbye to Heimdall because we didn't. We just watched him die and then he was gone.
Yep.
So, I mean, that was cool to see him again. I wish the scenes were flip-flopped, if that makes any sense. I wish we got the Hercules reveal at the end and then Jane. But
yeah, in a way, isn't it funny though? Both credit scenes undermine deaths in the movie.
Yes.
Pretty ironic.
Yeah, because nobody really dies.
No, I know. That's so funny. So yeah, like I said though, where do we go from here? Because while I was watching Assembled, I was just like, how have we not talked about this? That Taika has essentially created the new Thor, right? From Ragnarok.
And completely broke the mold of Thor.
To me, that's Thor 1 now. And so now we've gotten Thor 2. I was like, how are we not talking now about like what is the third movie going to be of this Thor trilogy? If they choose to do that, but I totally think they could. There's enough in here of like really rounding out like who Thor is, because now we've got like that first movie broke him down to just being by himself, and I think it's so funny, I messaged you about it, I haven't even talked about it, but I'd said so Thor starts out as like a Shakespearean drama in that first movie. He's got a giant supporting cast, he's got a love interest, all the classic tropes, but then Ragnarok throws all that out the window, kills all the side characters. We get the whole, it's a mutual dumping with Jane. Like, we don't even see that she's dumped because, again, for that movie, it didn't matter. It's just Thor's by himself. Now he's single. But then this movie is like, okay, who really does matter to Thor? Who can be in his life? Who does he want to be in his life? And unfortunately, again, he chooses Jane in the sense that she's gone again. But I think there's some valuable lessons there, especially now with love. So I could see this third movie really exploring what it means to be a father, maybe him trying to work on some of the mistakes that he feels his father made, which I think you could easily make a movie about, especially tying in the theme of his father with Hercules' father, of having this whole, thing about fathers, which would be very similar, I guess, to Guardians 2, but you could make it a little bit different, I guess.
Better.
Any thoughts from you, though, on what maybe they'd go with it? That's like all I have. I really don't know. They're so... we'll do whatever we want, sort of thing.
I don't know. I mean, we got the classic Marvel end scene of Thor will return.
Yes.
Which would that tie him with Downey for appearances? He's at 8. I thought Downey was at 9.
Maybe. I mean, he's now broken the record of solo movie appearances.
Yeah. Which good for him.
Oh yeah, I would never. You'd asked me that back in 2011. I would have probably said it'd be Iron Man, but I would have said I wished it was Thor. So we're living in a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go from here. Again, at the same time, we don't know where the MCU is going from here. So all we can do is sit back and wait.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see if they announce anything for Comic-Con, because you would think with this and with Doctor Strange being in the process of same story of if you were doing a trilogy, there's one more movie to tell. And so with both of those movies doing really well at the box office, when do you announce that there's going to be a sequel? So
right, and Taika's doing a Star Wars movie, which I believe the next movie in the Star Wars universe is going to be Taika's. Did you hear he asked Natalie Portman to be in it?
Yeah, he was like, "Have you ever been in a Star Wars movie?"
Because he forgot she was in the prequel series.
Man, if I was her, I'd be like, "I'm good. I think I'm good."
That'd be so funny if she was like, "Sure, I'll be in it," and then like see how far they let her be like, "What?"
Yeah, she gets to Lucas Ranch and they're like, or Skywalker Ranch, they're like, "What are you doing here? We banned you."
Right.
We ban all prior actors because of the secrets on the ranch. Okay, so with that said, before we wrap up, I'm going to see if I hit the issues that I had. And again, I didn't have a lot, but I said the pacing was a little off. Like I said, it felt like it was moving really quickly. They could have probably taken a couple minutes to develop. Definitely Valkyrie a little more, maybe Gore just a little more. But again, I'm happy with the way that we got it. I'm not even really complaining. The fear of death, we talked about that. Too many Guns N' Roses songs. I'll stand by that. We heard one of them twice in the movie, and you can argue we heard the Immigrant song twice in Ragnarok, but that song just hit so perfectly in those moments, whereas these Guns N' Roses songs all sounded the same. And I was like, wait, was it Sweet Child of Mine, or was it Welcome to the Jungle or Paradise City? But I also heard that Taika really likes those songs, which again is not, I mean, it's an explanation. I don't know if it's a good excuse. Because at the same time, Axl, plus he's wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt. So it was like, how much Guns N' Roses are you wanting in this? But again, I think that's probably a small nitpick. And then the other one being, as it always happens, is the comedy took away from the emotion just a little bit too. There were some spots where I probably would have felt something a little more if I wasn't too busy laughing so hard.
Yeah, the only one that got me on that aspect of it was when Gore has all of them tied up and says, "Call the axe," and then Thor immediately comes back with, "I will after you call a dentist." Like, I laughed, but then I'm like, man, like Christian Bale was like in just a mood, just on a roll. And then but I guess at the same time, like, this is the character that Thor is now, where he just has the quips, where he just immediately sarcastic comments come flying out of his mouth, which again is fine. I love the character and I love the direction he's gone, but that was the only time that I really felt that way as far as the humor went. As far as nitpicks, I don't really have anything. Again, I went into this movie with pretty high expectations because of how much I love Ragnarok, but I tried to put those aside when I finally started to watch it.
Yeah.
And again, I smiled and laughed for 2 hours and went to the movies and saw it on the big screen and had that cinematic experience, which is what I like to do with the MCU and anything else I can. But yeah, I don't want to search for nitpicks other than, oh, well, that's all convenient. Well, but it's a movie about space pirates.
Yeah, like how complicated do you want it?
Right.
Especially when it's only 2 hours and we're in July. Like, this is your summer blockbuster.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely are going to have movies in the MCU that touch on heavier subjects and, the themes of Falcon and Winter Soldier and, just the hard-hitting questions of life, but this isn't that movie.
No. And it's very early on, like, this is not what we're trying to be either.
Right.
Nice. Well, yeah. So, overall, again, loved this one. I can't wait to watch it again. Ranking-wise, my rankings are always changing, but I put it as my number 10 MCU movie. Give it a 9 out of 10.
It would probably be top 10 for me as well. I don't have my rankings. I can't. I mean, I know I did a show on it, so I guess I could go back and see what those rankings were. But I feel like this is definitely breaking top 10 for me.
Oh yeah, and it's easily probably one of the most rewatchable, I would say, too, of them. Just because I feel like you could put this on at any time, at any point in the movie,
exactly,
and you're just going to be entertained. Because again, you're not trying to follow the plot; it's more of like, oh, here comes another really good joke.
Right, like you can't turn Thor: Dark World on halfway through and be like, "Wait, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Also, don't ever turn it on ever.
I like Thor: The Dark World, but it is one of my least favorites of the entire. It's second to least of the whole MCU, so it's still there, but I still like it. Well, awesome, Anthony. Thank you so much for taking this trip with me. This was really fun. I'm glad we got to spill all the beans about Thor.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was gonna see it again this Wednesday. Schedule is not gonna permit it, so hopefully the following week I'll be able to go see it again and just laugh at those goats.
I know, and it'll be interesting to see what the rewatchability is for others too, like how well this movie does in its second weekend and all of that, or if it's top heavy. But we will see, and we will let you guys know as we continue to give you guys the best that we can here on Comics and Cinema. I'm your host, Alex Klein. Thank you guys so much for listening.